I ran a copy of it, so.
Yeah, see, the thing about accepting games on the new system is that nobody knows you've been assigned until you accept. Whereas the old system, as soon as I assigned you,
Still see the name.
well, see, the old system that you see the name, but it didn't mean you were confirmed. So they go, well, you assigned John. How come he's not a ref anymore? I go, because John didn't accept the match. Now it's, you don't have anybody assigned or anything. No, that's not true. I guess
Here you go.
they just have them.
So you're live now. There's nothing on this screen.
So, hello, children.
Figure this out.
Good for the brief period that I was actually in Ireland, as opposed to the UK and the Netherlands, but that's what the right function is too long. I have to do it. Right.
Are we starting? All right, guys. So it looks like we're getting going on this. My presentation for today, where's the mark? And I was back through a lot of law book in order to figure out a lot of questions. Very section on penalties. Click on it, and it automatically drops you into a nice little section that says location of a penalty or free kick. And they run down the list. Run down this because there's a few kind of areas, and I thought I'd point some of them out. Starting at the top, the mark for a penalty or free kick must be in the field of play and no closer than 5 meters from the goal line, as per the following table. Now, that's a slight clause. It may be intended or inadvertent, but it is a change nonetheless. The old laws, you can't have an penalty within 5 meters of a goal line, but you can have a defending penalty. A double move, a meter from the goal line. Well, the penalty is a per the new intended or other, that's no longer the case. Now all penalties have to come out 5 meters. So don't know if I need clarification on that moving forward, but that's where we are. Next up, another one that's penalty is at the place of infringement. No, seriously, people, it's at the place of infringement. It's not 5 meters from the sideline because you deemed it that way. It's not 5 meters from the sideline because some guy on TV did it that way. The mark is, if the penalty is a 1.5 from the sideline, then the penalty is a 1.5 from the sideline. It's not golf. You don't get relief. You don't get to bring it in 5 meters any more than you would take a conversion, scored in the corner, and let the kicker take the kick in 5 meters because you have the exact same effect. You move that penalty in 5 meters, it's an easier kick for somebody going for goal, and it's a better angle for somebody kicking for touch. If now they elect to scrum, that penalty has to come 5 meters. So if they want it in 5 meters, they got to scrum. Simple enough. Don't take the mark. The penalty's not in. While the ball is dead, on the touch within 15 meters of it, then the mark is 15. So anytime you got a dead ball, anything that happens in touch, out of bounds, it all comes in 15 meters. If play would have restarted with a 22 dropout, the mark is anywhere on the 22-meter line. So it's coming out to that based on where the infringement happened out to the 22. Hopefully that makes sense. Next up, any infringement that takes place outside the playing area while the ball is in play. So let's say play is going on and two guys are or in to come out 5 meters in line with the place no less than 15 meters from the touch line. So let's you guys are it out in the try zone. Down in the corner, the penalty comes in 5, out 5, and in 15. If it's two guys on the sideline at the 10-meter line, then the penalty is 15 at the 10-meter line. Hopefully everybody's catching on to what we're looking for there. Your law 1, we want to go to law like whatever the last one is that's listed numbers on. Sure. Yeah, back of the book. Well, and that's just it. You know, as question from the audience, duking it out, who just gets a penalty? I suppose if one guy's getting it out and the other one's getting duked, then you probably it's your time. But yeah, for the penalty, some figure out retaliation, etc. But we'll kind of go from there. Lineouts. Any infringement in a lineout comes in 15 meters from the touch line. And that's for everything, guys. That's a penalty. That's a kick. If somebody pumps it or goes up early in the line, kick. Kicks in 15 meters. If there's a lineout, punches somebody at the lineout, even though the punch was in, the penalty's in 15. That end. As an end, it's a long. They ruck results comes in 15 meters, not with the ruck or the maul. So say a jumper goes up, catches the ball, comes the maul, a ruck happens right there, player goes off his feet, and so you've got a penalty. Even though you've got a ruck 5 meters in, because it's still at a lineout, the penalty goes in 15 meters. So hopefully that makes a certain amount. Easy way to remember it, anything in a lineout comes in 15 meters. Offsides at phase play. At the offending team's offside line. In the case where you've got the guy in front of the penalty, the option for that is this. Let's say the guy is one step ahead of me. He is one step. But let's say I'm kicking on the guy that's offside is all the way down with the ball, and he's standing. He was never onside. And so the penalty then is where that guy is standing next to the receiver. So obviously, if the penalty is right next to the guy, you're going to want the penalty there. If the penalty is down to where the ball is caught and the guy's offside way down the field, go with the scrum option back to where the guy kicked it. Or scrum. The more offside you are, the better advantage that. Then if you're 40 ahead of the kick farther away, so that way. Any subsequent infringement advanced 10 meters from the original mark. That's just being back 10 from another 10. Pretty straightforward. This is the kick scenario. I'm going to run down this. A lot of writing, but it lands 30 meters down the field. Rolls another. Well, the penalty is 50 meters down the field. It's a 30-20. It's played. Excuse me. So take that back. If it lands down the field and rolls for another 20, then it's where the ball lands. If it hits down the field and is played, the penalty's farther down the field. So if you have that situation, you have to question as to whether or not the non-infringing team plays the ball. Placed in the kicker's goal. The penalty is taken 5 meters from the goal line, in line with the place of the infringement, but at least 15 meters from the touch line. Basically, any penalty that happens about 5 meters. Easiest way to look at it. Non-offending team may also choose to take the penalty where the ball lands or where it's next played before at least 15 meters from the touch line. Anytime a ball is kicked, the penalty has to come in 15 meters. Whether it lands 10 meters in or in touch, it's going to come in 15 meters. If the ball lands, let's see your next one. The ball lands or is next played before landing within 50 meters, touch line, the mark is 50 meters, opposite, okay. If the ball lands in goal or touching goal or on or over the dead ball line, the optional penalty is 5 meters from the goal line, in line with where the place where the ball crossed the goal line, and at least 15 meters from the touch line. So out 5, in 15. My take on it is you got a late charge. Let's see here. If the ball hits the goal post or crossbar, the optional penalty kick is awarded where the ball lands. Obviously, if the ball hits the crossbar and lands in goal, come out 5 meters, and you can't have a penalty within 5 meters. But it's one of those. If it hits the post, the penalty will be no closer to the goal line than 5 meters. If it hits the goal post, it's back 15 meters, then your penalty is 15 meters out. If that makes sense. If the ball is thrown or knocked on, the mark is at that spot. Intentionally throwing or knocking the ball into touch. into touch or touch and go over the dead ball line from the playing area. The mark is where the infringement occurred, but no closer than 15 and 5. Anything in goal, like I said, going to come out 15 and 5. Into touch, touch and goal, in goal. Mark is on the 5-meter line, at least 15 meters from the touch line. Over the dead ball line, in goal. Mark is 15. In line where infringement occurred. In a from the goal line, in line with the place of infringement. So it doesn't look like a typo. They don't want any penalties within 5 meters, not attacking penalties.
So both attacking and defending penalties that are in goal are out 5, correct?
Attacking and defending penalties that are in goal are out 5, and attacking or meters of the goal line are out 5. So it used to be you could have a defending penalty within 5 meters, and you can no longer do that. And just so you know, a penalty or free kick is taken from where it is awarded or anywhere behind it on a line through the mark and below to the touch lines. When a penalty or free kick is taken at the wrong place, it must be retaken. So we had this instance the other day, and it was odd because Tim Liu made the call, and Tim Liu is the picture adjacent to the law. But it comes out 5 meters. So any of that issues, I know
that's significant, particularly if you've got deep in goals.
Yeah, you catch. Well, and this happened in this game. The player did in fact catch the ball 12 to 15 meters in goal, called the mark, and the mark came out 20 meters, and then he got the free kick and the safety of being inside the inside the 22. So taking the mark in goal is a pretty significant thing sometimes. Another question earlier about when you've got a ball that gets passed back into, say you've got a scrum 5 meters, and the ball gets passed back to the fly half who is standing in their own in goal, and that ball gets charged down. The position of the player charging the ball down is significant to the extent that if red passed the ball back into red's own try zone and blue charges that ball down, it matters how the ball got into that try zone. So if red took it in and they go to kick it out and blue charges it down and they're in front of the goal line, or if they're, I should say, in goal. So if they're in and blue charges without red getting the ball back out of their own goal, then it's going to be a scrum. If the ball gets passed back into the try zone, red kicks it and blue charges it down, and they're still in the field of play, then red got it out of their try zone. Blue then charged down and was the impact of the ball going in the try zone and dead. Therefore, it's a 22-meter dropout. So you have to look to see if the ball's taken in by the defending team. Look to see where the player that does the charge down is. If he charges it down without the ball coming out of the try zone, 5-meter attacking. If the ball clears that goal line before he charges it down, and the returns the ball to the goal, then it's going to be a 22-meter dropout. Fair enough? Good. I think. That's a reasonable example. About is that if somebody knocks the ball touch and it's a fairly significant knock on. The scrum is where the guy knocks it on. The line of touch is where it goes. If I knock it on at the 10-meter line and it goes at the halfway, the scrum is at the 10-meter line, the lineout would be at the halfway. And so that would be an impetus potentially for a team to take the scrum as opposed to the lineout because they do pick up a little bit more ground. I don't have much else that I could think of on this topic we need to discuss. All righty then. Who's up next? So next up in our presentation tonight will be Miss Lee Bryant. You're being recorded. This is being cast. So yes, you do.
Oregon. I'm just kidding. All right. I need the dry erase board though. So you gotta move. All right, let's get this party started. Woo! Okay. Okay, so my thing tonight is about mental sharpness, and like how to keep it together when you're on the field, ways to stay, how to prepare for games, how to stay sharp in those games. So this last year I did something similar, and so I'm going to ask the same questions, though it's a small group. In regards to those topics, what do you want to get out of this tonight? What do you want to know? Like, what's something that you want me to talk about or hit on? I'm still going to do my presentation. But, huh? Oh, I have so many comments, but I'm going to keep those to myself. So, what do you guys like? What do you want to know? What is something that you want to get out of this presentation besides free food? Come on, developing ref. What do you want to know?
How to change your level of your tolerance between different levels.
So how to get thicker skin as the pressure goes up, right? Or how to keep your cool as the pressure goes up, kind of thing. Okay. What's that? Oh, he's left. John, what do you want to get out of this presentation? I'm sure you know all of this, but
on this topic, how do you recognize to yourself that you're losing interest or you're losing connection with the game? What do you see as the triggers to wake yourself up?
okay. And I would like to know yours when we get to that too, because I'm sure you have some. What do you want to know?
Kind of the same with John. It's like when I've got a game, it's either, the players are just being disruptive, not respectful. The game is kind of out of control. How do I keep myself mentally strong and still stay in it and pretend like I'm actually interested in what happens?
Okay, so it's the paddling duck thing. How do I keep my feet moving? Paul, what do you want to know? Or what do you think what would be also important?
The big issue I see with referees as I move into more of a coaching role is the processing events in real time and the significance of those events.
Okay.
So recognizing when teams are recognizing in real time when teams are being put under pressure, recognizing processing in real time when.
So patterns, trends,
So
stuff like that.
Trends, but also as a referee, processing events in real time and recognizing the significance of those events.
Okay, Pete.
I think being able to see things in the order that you need to see them in so that the game slows down.
Okay, so being
Kind
able
of a mental checklist so that things aren't, I don't want to say surprising you.
okay.
You check to see if they're offside before you look and go, gee, I wonder if that guy was offside.
Okay. Perfect. Good. This gives me a mesh to work on. So there's three big pieces to being sharp on the field. At least this is how I categorize it for myself and from what I've read and what I've been through and talked to people. Is the way you prepare, the way you stay ready and quick on the field is you got to prepare. And there's situational preparedness, physical preparedness, and mental preparedness. If you deal with these three things, this will improve how sharp you are in the field and how it'll help you process information on the field. And will make you a better referee because then you'll go from just seeing stuff and reacting to it to processing it and making educated decisions on it. And it'll help the way you see the game. And it'll help you with all of these things. So physical preparedness, that's a pretty simple one, right? Like when you're sucking air, it's really hard to make decisions, right? Because your body is in flight or fight mode, and all it knows is that it's not happy, and so it's sending all of all the information is in a panic mode. So this is a really easy one. How do you deal with this? Just get in better shape, right? And get in shape for what you're doing. Because if your body is tired, then it'll take away from these other two pieces. So if you feel like you're late to the breakdown, or you're out of shape, or you're stuck in air and you feel like you can't think, well, just fix that part. This is a very easy one to fix. Boop. Goes off in class. Oh my God.
I'm sharing it for other people that keep asking because they're so intrigued by what you're saying.
I'm sure. All right, and then there's this mental part of it. So there's a couple pieces to that where when I started refereeing, and this is a story that Paul always tells me, is you were very scared and very timid and didn't know if you could do it. And I said, yep, you're right.
Nothing's changed.
and it was a fear, right? I felt out of place on the field. I felt like I couldn't keep up. I felt like I was missing things. It's too fast. I feel like I can't see the game. My penalty count is too high. All of these fears, right? All of these things that we feel in our game that we don't like. I don't feel comfortable on the field. I feel incompetent, right? So a big part of how you stay sharp on the field is to deal with what's going on in your head. So one way is to be positive and to do affirmations. I can't do this. I'm not scared. Yeah, and I'm looking at you, buddy, because we've had this chat a few times. I am not scared for this game. I am excited. Right? I'm not scared. I'm not nervous. I'm excited. I can do this. Or I'm not the best referee yet. Or this is hard for me, but I will get better and it will happen. So you have to be positive. Right, exactly. And these are things that I have to have a support system where when they would see me like having my emotional bowel movement after a game, right? They'd be like, you're fine, you can do it, right? So that's external, but you have to be able to do that internally, right? I can do this. I can do this. And it seems like a very simple thing, but if you don't have that growing mindset, as they call it, or that positive sense to what you're doing, then it's destructive and it won't help you progress. And then when you're on the field and you have those moments where your game is circling the toilet bowl and you feel like you have no control, you realize that you do. And that's one way to deal with self-awareness and the tolerance, right? I can feel this pressure building, but that's fine. It's just part of what I do, right? I can hear the stands booing. That's just part of what I do. And then all of a sudden it changes that internal dialogue and you can refocus and be like, that's cool. I don't really care if you like my yellow card or not because it's still going to happen, right?
Well, and beyond that, you have to remember, like you said, the self-awareness. You don't want your game to go down the toilet bowl. It's one thing to make a bad call. It's another to have a bad game.
Right. How do I
You've
recover?
Remember that, especially if you make the mistake early in the game, you've got to right your ship because you don't want it to be a bad game.
Yeah, 80 minutes is a long time. Even 14 minutes can feel like a long time if it's going down the toilet bowl, right? So that's the thing, is be positive, have a growing mindset. This is a process, right? I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm still not very good, right? But I will be at some point in my career. So that's the way to, yeah, right? You let me know. You let me know. And another part of it too is recognize in yourself when you get amped up, right? Or when you feel like you are out of control. When you feel out of control, when people are yelling at you, or when there's higher pressure. Okay, so if you can sense that in yourself, then you can fix it. You can change it. So for me, the things that I do when I feel like it's getting emotional, I'm getting amped up, or you know, I have to go talk to the AR because there's a foul play called or whatever. I tell myself reset in my head. It's all I do. Say reset, and it forces me to recognize, okay, my heart rate's up. I need to refocus. And some people have different things. Some people play with their whistle. Some people, you know, move their feet. Some people say something. Some people have their ARs say something to them. But you have to have some kind of mechanism to reset yourself. Mine is literally but it works. So, but the first step is being aware. My heart rate's up, blah, blah. One of the things that Rasta said on a sevens tour, I was talking to him, he said, I make a lot of errors when my heart rate is elevated, like normal. Like I can do my heart rate monitor. As soon as my heart rate just spikes, I'll make a decision and it's probably an error. So he had to learn how to self-regulate that. So that's a big one. So the mental part of it takes a lot of soul searching as a referee and figuring out what works and what doesn't. And if you're finding that, like in these ones, you have higher, but those tools work for any level, right? I say reset no matter what game I'm doing. It could be an international match or it could be a local match. It doesn't matter because my body will still respond to stress. And since I know, I can deal with it. Because in my rule of thumb is there's no such thing as a friendly match. They're not real. They don't exist, and I don't care if you call it that, because I find that most of the big fights I've ever had were in friendlies, so those aren't real. Okay. And also, once you have that, so those are the big parts of the mental prep, right? Is being positive and have a growing mindset, and being able to self-regulate and self-observe. Okay, you're in games, in matches, we are collecting so much data internally and externally, and we have to find a way to systematically recognize it, categorize it, and make decisions with it. Okay, so we've dealt with this, physical. I'm gonna get in shape so that I never am apoxia and I can always make decisions, right? Good, awesome. Okay, this, I'm always staying positive, I have a growing mindset, and I have found a way to self-regulate. Great. It is situational. This happens in two different ways. So it's kind of like what Paul was saying, is how do I get my checklist right? Okay, well, one, you have to know what rugby looks like. Okay, so watch a lot of rugby, right? I know what it looks like. So that's one part of situational. The other one is as I can't think of the term for they use it right now in USA Rugby, but you're making a situation on the field artificially so that when that situation happens, you're already ready for it, right? So if I already know that if I have 3 repeated, tackles or whatever, dangerous tackles, and I'm between the 22s, I already have a spiel. I already know what I'm going to say, right? Or if I see a dangerous tackle, elbow, first contact to the face, I know it's going to be a red card, I already have a spiel, right? So I've taken that stress away from it because I already know what I'm going to do. It's already done, right? So doing stuff in front of the mirror, going for hard runs, and when your heart gets up, doing those situations, another way to stimulate artificially what you're dealing with in the game. So it helps a lot because you already know what you're going to do. So there's still some nuances to games, right? Things happen, and you'll still have to be on the fly. But you really can. I mean, I'm sure if we did a list right now, we could come up with 30 scenarios right now, make a spiel of what we're going to say, and figure out how we're going to deal with it. We already knew how to do that.
Well, I had an opportunity to AR for like quality referee. And one of them before the game, I asked what you were working on, and they said they wanted to not have to talk to the players hardly at all after the first 20 minutes. And I found it pretty interesting. And I said, how are you going to do that? And they said, well,
run it out of them.
Get the tackle clean. I'm going to clean this tackle up so that, the players within the first 20 minutes of the game, they know what the expectation is at a tackle. If they roll over on the ball, when they hit the ground, they get out. And I was absolutely amazed at how well it actually worked. That like really after about 20 minutes, any player that fell on the ground at a tackle found stuff like there was a bomb right next to him and got the heck away from the whole thing. It cleaned the stuff up and it made referees' mental and physical challenges so much less because they could deal with other things in the game.
Well, and that kind of is a good segue into the checklist and processing information. Another part of it's not just spiels of what you're going to do, like when there's foul play. It's also developing a picture of what parts of the game are supposed to look like and what you want it to look like, right? So it's the same concept. Like if you talk to a radiologist and they say, like, God, how do you know what a fracture, like a hairline fracture looks like? They go, when you look at x-rays every day that are normal, when you see one that's abnormal, it's real obvious. So even things like tackles or rucks that are dynamic, if you have a very concise picture of what you what it should look like, what you think it should look like, then it's very easy to dissect it and say each piece, I want the release to look like this. I want this to look like this. I want this to look like this. And then you've developed this checklist. And then it's very easy then if you see it to say, that's not what I want it to look like. And so it helps you process the information because you've done situational prep beforehand, so you know what it looks like. And then that, again, that takes the stress out of the game. It was like what Pete was saying, was like, crap, did that just happen? I don't know. But if you have that concise picture, you already know. You already know if it happened and if you're okay letting it go or not.
But I also think that if you can proactively manage things, your job will be much easier, and you're actually going to be a much better referee if you can actually see that high tackle start and stop it before it actually creates, or when the person starts to lift a tip tackle, and you're telling them hips first, whatever, you can. I think you can control things by being proactive, and it makes you just
Yeah, players hate ambiguity too. They
What I
hate
meant by checklist, and to some degree would be as a lineups example. So, okay, we're on the right mark, great. We got numbers right, okay, that's good. Now I've got the gap set with the gap. Okay, my non-throwing hooker here, got a non-throwing hooker. Do I have a receiver on either side? Okay, this side's got a receiver. Now I'm checking the backs. Are they 10? Are they 10? Okay, we're good there. So I'm going through that checklist in my head. And what I said before about the guy being offside, if I never checked the defensive backs to see if they were back 10 and the line out happens, and I don't know if they were offside or not because I never checked to see that they were onside. So what I'm saying is you have a checklist in your head to make sure that everybody's where they're supposed to be and everything's what's supposed to happen. As far as like a process, and this is kind of something I realized, but I believe that when you start refereeing, you are doing a lot of things that most referees do subconsciously, very consciously. You are thinking about what your running lines are. You are wondering, what your whistle or signal or positioning, any of that stuff. And so you're very consciously thinking about those items. And as a result of spending a lot of brain power figuring out where you're supposed to run, when you're supposed to get there, how you're supposed to blow your whistle, what your signal is, and all that stuff, you can't then focus on what's actually happening in the game.
Exactly.
And the more that becomes subconscious, then the more ability you have to see what's happening consciously. So then you can see.
Yeah, and that's why this is important, because then because it's already something you've prepared for and it's second nature to you, then it takes the stress away because you already have a plan of how you're going to deal with it and what it looks like.
Yeah, and then it gets to the next step. So now I don't have to worry about my running lines or whistle or signal or any of that stuff. I'm past that. Then you go, well, okay, can I identify a penalty? Okay, well, I can. So you're worried about identifying penalties. Once you get past that point, you've identified the penalty. Now you have the conscious mind to figure out what you want to do with it. Do I want to play advantage? Is it material? Do I need to blow my whistle? So then your checklist just continues to expand. You can't think what I'm going to do with this penalty if you're still trying to figure out what you're supposed to signal when you blow.
Right, or did it even just happen?
Did it even exist?
Right. Did
So,
it just happen?
and so, unfortunately, and I get some of these refs that get started, they want to jump straight to the top, and to some degree, there's just no substitute for doing it.
Yeah, and then also the next piece also is this tolerance part. So what helps also when you're to go to the next level or to the next challenge or the next hard game is if you have done these things, then when you do feel that higher pressure or you're seeing things moving twice as fast or whatever, it's much easier to say, okay, reset, let's go back to this, what we just did, because the tools still work. You might have to tweak them based on the game or whatever, but this can apply to any level. And it will help you adjust to that. And then also the situational part, like Pete was saying, part of it's just doing it. But you can start from the beginning again and be like, okay, I've worked through this, and this. Now is the next big game. Go back to here and be like, all right, I'm excited for this opportunity to be challenged. And that helps you get through this and this. So they're all interwoven, but that's a big part. So this is like the bread and butter of how I have progressed as a referee and what works for me and what works for a lot of people. This is how you get better. This is how you deal with that pressure. This is also a good way that when you have a bad game, that you don't, well, I still cry in the shower, but I might not cry in a corner. So, so that's how I do it, my emotional bowel movement. But so
So it's interesting. One of the things about the processing in real time that I've been having interesting conversations with referees with, when I have the opportunity to see them, and they've got radios. And we've got decent radios with communicate where the coach can actually communicate with the ref. On downtime, I will actually ask the referee what they're thinking about.
Tacos.
Well, it's funny. The referees that are higher caliber, they're constantly in cognition mode. They're processing the last tackle, the number of penalties that they've had. They're thinking about something. When I ask less experienced referees, I ask them the question, and it's almost like a mind melt.
I just want to go cry.
They're thinking about the hot girl on the sideline. You see those cones in the
They're like, I wonder how fast I can drive.
But yeah, it's
You think the coach is going to choke me out?
Anybody notice if I go this way?
so no, but that's exactly it. And so it's interesting to have that conversation with referees because it's a very pointed question. What are you thinking about right now? And they will.
And so once you kind of once you get that mental sharpness down, then you move into that next piece, which has kind of been alluded to already, is to see the game and make decisions for the game that you're seeing on the field. It's higher level. So this is like the normal progression of being a referee. Okay, this is a bell curve. Okay, what happens is you start here and you call nothing because you can't really see anything, or if you do, you don't have the huevos to call it. So you just play on. And then you get here where you call everything because you finally see it, right? All of a sudden, oh my God, I see it. I'm going to call this. And I finally have the gumption to like do it. I'm going to call that. I'm going to give that yellow card, right? And then this is the hard part though. This is the hard transition right here. And this is where you get the top level referees, is where they've worked through all of this. They've prepared. They've learned how to get penalty counts down because they want the game to move a little bit more. They've dealt with their own issues, right? They're in good shape and they have all these situations. And then all of a sudden you can see the game and you can make decisions like they were just saying, okay, I'm going to play advantage on this a little bit longer for this team because they're getting destroyed in the scrum. And that's not an advantage to them. Or, okay, is that destructive or is it dominant? Okay. And so you start having these higher level conversations on the field in your head, and then you can make the game flow again, and it feels like rugby used to be when you started playing. But it takes all of this to cross this line, and that's where we want to get everyone to. Is it's pretty hard to get rid of that middle bell curve. It's pretty much impossible for most referees. Like, just accept it. That's part of the growing mindset, right? Yep. I'm going to ride this wave, and then I'm going to get through it, and then I will hopefully get through this. But being mentally sharp is all of this so that you can get to that higher level and start having those conversations and deal with the nuance of the game and make it a fun game. Make it move. Let the teams use their dominance or their skills better in certain ways than the other team's dominance. So that's how you get to that sharpness. And then that pressure that you feel, David, that you talk about, it just becomes part of it. It becomes an innate part of what you do, and then it's just there. You expect it. It's not a factor anymore because you can manage all that in your head, and that's how you deal with like that increasing pressure. So
I consider 3 C's of refereeing: confidence,
and cookies. Right. So, I mean, I could talk about like the emotional part of being a referee like forever. Maybe it's because I'm a chick. I don't know. But because this is actually very hard to do. Like, this is very hard to do. This is really hard to do. And putting all these things together when you're a pressure cooker is really hard to do. But if you have those right skills and mindset, then it's not as hard to do, and it just becomes part of the process. And as a bonus, I brought some books if you guys want them, because I've already read them and, whatever. So one is the Psychology of Officiating, which is pretty good. But again, it doesn't deal with kind of like that emotional part of it. Rainbow Warrior. and call it like it is. And these are all players or referees that have played at the highest level. And it has really interesting to what some of the things, some of the issues they went through with themselves or the profession or rugby itself to get where they're at. And I think it's really important to recognize like that personal, emotional part of it, because what we do is an emotional thing. And you're getting yelled at, and at least one team's not going to like you, and you're in a stand with 30,000 people, and it's a lot. But that's where if you just stick to these three things, it'll really help you progress through your development.
You know, it's funny you mentioned the 30,000 stands. I had a conversation with her. You know, they're I don't want to say the angry ref, but you can see them having this range of emotions on the field.
Right.
It's very obvious, very evident. And I'll ask them, do you ever watch a game of rugby on TV? And they're like, of course. Like, you ever notice the referee? I said, you ever notice how the referee acts? And they're like, yeah. And I said, you ever see all the referees act exactly the same? And he's like, yep, pretty much. And I go, so then based on that information, how do you think you should act as a referee? And they're like, oh, I see your point.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that you have to continue to be the eye of the storm. You have to be the calm that is surrounded by the chaos or the infamous duck, you know, where the feet may be moving like mad under the water, but the top is still in pristine. And it's a hard thing. You don't want to act like you're a robot necessarily. I'm not saying you have to lose your
Yeah, that doesn't go
personality.
over well with the players.
You know, I'm out there telling jokes and doing things like that, and there's no issue there. But my point is that you can't go through these huge extremes of emotion. You've got to be that pillar because they're looking to you for confidence. They're looking to you for control. They want to know that you've got the game and that you're in charge.
Yeah, you're
and that
absorbing.
they're safe and that they're going to be, that if something happens, you're going to be there to make the call. And so they can focus on playing and not worry about what you're doing.
Yeah, you have to absorb a lot. But.
Just in terms of, you know, particularly when you get the referees on the curve on the way off, especially in the early parts of it. I mean, there's a lot of simple things like we talk, you know, people went on there, you know, this is my vision of what a line looks like, and this is where I'm going, and mentally I'm going across. It starts before that in terms of, if you look at the simple things that you do, assuming you get to the ground on time and you're not putting yourself under pressure.
Right.
Okay, obviously you make sure that you have your playbook at that point, which is go talk to the coaches,
right.
Find the captains, go do the boot check and stuff like that. A lot of people think there's nothing in the boot check. The boot check is as much about the referee having subliminal authority,
right?
And putting yourself on the pedestal of being the person who's actually in charge. Right? It's a very simple thing, but it's there. A lot of people skip it because they think it's kind of, I'm on a fake surface, the boots are all rubber, and there's nothing like that. It's about having the discipline to do that. The other things, like the simple things like saying, I'll call you captains 10 minutes before kickoff. Right? You know, you walk away from them, you're doing your own warm-up, you're doing your own stuff. Have a way of getting back in. That's 10-5, whatever you're comfortable with.
Nice.
It doesn't matter. And just getting that message, because that puts you back in charge before the game starts. Right? You've got there, you've done your business, you've got the coin tosses out of the way, you've shown your control, you've walked away. Now you come back and you reaffirm it sometime before the start. Right? In the meantime, something right? I always walk the perimeter. Right? It maybe doesn't start my it's getting into a point. What's the big tree? What's the big, you know, where are the lights? Halfway. Stuff like that. Everything that can make you comfortable on that patch of ground.
Yep.
Right? You know, where's the puddle that's going to break your ankle?
Right. I need more sand.
It's all of that. And the other thing then is, you talked about your trigger point. Okay, you're at the point now you know when to do that. But in actual fact, from a young referee, starting referees, or even any of us for that matter, you know, tell yourself, okay, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. But when I look at the watch, if I see I'm close to a zero or whatever on the time, that's the trigger to, you know, be very deliberate. Right? As opposed to it being something that you've got to trigger yourself.
Yeah, because
take a fixed time or whatever.
Yes.
You've done it with me when I've AR'd for you.
Yeah.
You've told me when there's 15 minutes to go, make sure you kick my ass. And tell me
right, wake me up. Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, that was a good point.
Pick fixed points.
Yeah, especially if you know you're like zoning out. Like same thing. I think I zoned out like 60 minutes and 20 minutes.
Yeah, you're going to have a lull at some point in the half. Either you're self-aware enough to catch it, or your AR is going to have to be watching for you. Or as John points out, just have a fixed point. 20 minutes in, hey, you got 20 minutes to go.
Or-
Fourth quarter.
Or even
Second
like
quarter,
watch
let's
your
go.
when you're watching film to be like, hey, why are you doing that at that time? And you're like, I didn't even know I was doing that. Like apparently I say, okay, ladies. Apparently I say it a million times. I had no idea. So that's good. That's another tool of like, we'll then get some more external data to deal with some of that stuff. So what's your reset button?
Oh, my reset button is very simple. Any time where I get a long break, if there's whatever, and if I get a chance to step, I'm immediately resetting. What I'm kind of doing, what all kind of, that question that comes from the sideline,
Mm-hmm.
what's the trend of the game,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's the last decision I made?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that in terms of, what's bugging me.
Right.
Because it might have happened 40 minutes ago in the first half.
Right.
What's nagging in the back of my head? What do I think I made a mistake on? Because we always make mistakes.
Right.
Simple as that. If there's something like that. Okay, so, yeah, sorry. For those of you without visual stuff, Lee, she doesn't make mistakes.
Lies.
It's that kind of, even, I had 8 hours of the weekend, which obviously we don't always have.
Mm-hmm.
And because we weren't Mike, it was actually good because I had a chat with Giles and JC sort of thing, and I said, okay, we're old school, let's make sure we're looking at each other. So that was my trigger throughout the thing, and it wasn't about me, the game was a comfortable game.
Yeah.
Right? It was a flowing game, there wasn't too much difference. But constantly through the piece, in terms of I was looking for eye contact with the guys, but it was also to keep me alert.
Right.
Right, from that side. So it's just about trying to figure something out. Whereas if I was Mike, I'd probably get damn lazy. In terms of that.
Okay. Well, that's good. And so, Spaghetti, what is your reset button?
So I also talk to myself a lot throughout my matches, and I will also after I make them.
Okay.
Are any of your discussions positive?
No.
No.
Spaghetti is the most.
I know.
He rips on himself so much.
It'll
So much.
never work.
All right, Pete. What is your reset button?
I like to kind of step outside my head and think to myself, is this a game I'd like to watch from the sideline? And if it isn't, what do I need to do to get it?
And do you do that in downtime or?
Yeah, typically, if I'm stopped, usually I'll notice that if it hasn't cleaned up my halftime, then what's going on. But most of my games, I think, tend to run about the same way. I think I can keep games going and flowing and be fairly exciting to some degree, at least as good as the players will allow. And then if it's not, then I have to figure out why that is. And, why am I blowing the whistle so much, or why are they not playing? What am I doing? What can I do to try and make this thing more exciting at the end of the day? I can't remember the last 3-0 game I refereed. I don't exist. So, I'd like to think if I can get 100 points out of a game, I've done a good job. In less than 20 penalties, great. I set different standards for different games. It's funny, you talk about it, different levels, different games. I believe you should work just as hard on a lower level Division 2 or 3 match. I did a D3 B side against an old boys team versus, say, a Premier League game. You should work just as hard at both matches.
Probably hired the D3.
Yeah, the D3 B side against the old boys game was brutal. And I had to work like mad. But the thing is the harder you work, the less they chat, because now they're listening to you and they're seeing you. But you got to put a lot of effort in, because there's a lot of preventative that goes on in that. Now, instead of identifying the 12 penalties that are going to happen, you're trying to prevent the 60 that are going to happen on the other end. So you're working just as hard, even though one level is considered much, much lower than the other. You're just calling different things and you're spending your effort in a different way. But I think that mentally, if you go out there with the attitude that this is a low-level game, then you're going to get a crappy game.
Right, and that's that being positive, right? That affirmation, like, this is going to be a good game. I'm going to give these guys a good match today.
Every game I ref is a great game.
All right, what's your reset button?
Well, my goal is always to try to create an environment where the players can play the best game they've ever had. So, and I think the main thing with that is to keep safe.
But how do you calm yourself? What's your reset button when it's not going that way? Do you have one?
My reset button is I have to actually just get on top of things a little bit quicker. 'Cause
Okay.
It's like, obviously, I'm not, they don't think I'm in control, so I need to take total control of this game. And I hate taking control of a game because it's not fun for anybody.
So your reset button is being like, I'm going to call this penalty faster or
I'm
something.
gonna call, there's no advantage any longer. There's, everything that I see is being called.
Okay. Paul,
What's your reality?
what's your reset button?
So I have a couple of triggers. If I start looking at my watch more than
How
2 or 3
long?
times in the course of a game, I realize that I'm not comfortable, and there's a reason for me not being comfortable.
Mhm.
So then I start going through the process as to what is occurring to make me look at my watch.
Okay.
That's my tell that things are not going well at the office.
Okay.
I'll go back to the focus that I'm on, because I think that if I have a goal for that match, and the goals will change depending on the match, if I focus on a goal and something's going on to where the trigger is initiated and I'm looking at my watch, I go back to that goal and figure out why I'm not achieving that goal, because something is related to that.
Okay.
I used to wear a Livestrong band when I was reffing high-level games, and I would snap that trigger. That was my trigger to get back into the game.
Right.
I would physically snap that. Now I use a rubber band. But yeah, that's my trigger that I need to refocus.
Okay.
When I find I'm to the point now where I can walk onto a field, engage people in conversations, and that's my means to come down low. If I find that the game is getting too tense, I'll talk to somebody, have a quiet conversation, bring the captains over, talk during downtime to bring it back down. But again, that's that area where you start, particularly at these playoff games, because players are now under extreme
Right.
amounts of pressure. You have to find ways to bring the pressure down to the players, because our pressure is being, we have self-imposed pressure, and we have pressure that's being initiated from the players. I find that if I can talk to a player to bring them down, that's going to bring me down. So those are the triggers that I focus on.
Yeah, when you're looking at also your reset buttons, there's kind of 2 ways to look at it too. One is a preventative trigger. So like my reset one can go both ways. If I can feel myself getting action to like negative play, or I'm me down before, but it can also be a way after something happens. So make sure you have a trigger that can do both. It can prevent, but it can also calm you down. So anyway, that's all I have. So any questions for me? No? Okay.
So there's one more topic that I'd like to go over, and I'd like to kind of role play this.
Are we gonna do hand puppets?
We're not going to have puppets. We are going to talk about the team of four with regards to the number 12.
Oh, I don't want this anymore.
So you're going to hear that Shetty. Shetty's going to be the referee. I didn't bring my whistle. That's fine. Shetty, go through your pregame discussion.
Sure. You mind, David?
Hi, John.
John? Pedro, nice to meet you. So,
Once we have it, stick out your flag, or you radio it in, do the mirror. And let me know if it's against the defending team or the attacking team, so we can play advantage, or if you don't feel like there shouldn't be an advantage. I'll bring you on the field and we'll talk. Let me lead the conversation. I'll go through it and I'll make a recommendation. I'll ask you if that recommendation is correct, if you think it should be elevated or what. And then we're gonna have to go old school. You're gonna be yelling at me, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. Don't worry. You can just yell "ref guy." I'll try to respond. And we'll try to make anything there. Well, let me go talk to my fourth official. Oh, absolutely. You should just wave it on out, David. So the biggest thing is whenever you find anything, you'll keep, hopefully you can keep time on sin bins for me. When they sit down is when the clock starts. And then if our radios crap out and you can't, or malfunction and you cannot contact me directly for substitutions, bring them to the ARs and we'll have to go through the ARs and have them yell, and you can yell as well. Okay. Just the color and the number going off.
To go to defensive line or do
So I primarily want each one of you to separate, so we can have one person on the defending side and one person on the attacking. Both ARs. Pumps, things of that nature. Try to do the triangle. Is it the triangle?
Triangulate.
Yeah. That's as far as I usually get with my in-person talk. So trailing is going to look, when the ball is going away from you, trailing AR, look at the tackle for 2 or 3 seconds afterwards. Make sure there's nothing going on. Leading AR, try to be in line with the ball as much as you can. I understand that these are high-paced games, so you may not be able to get back in line with the ball as it comes out. But
I ran all that way over there. He still didn't pay attention.
do it if you don't do it when they miss. This is
Yeah.
rugby.
One of the things that I think ARs need to do a better job of, and one as is when I go around watching it, ARs need to be cognizant of their idea and try not to be on the same plane. So as a referee, your primary job is the ball in that decision. And the ARs have to adjust position. We also have an issue with ARs being aware of where the other AR is on the field, so that there's not 2 ARs covering the same plane. It looks absolutely horrendous, particularly when there's a call that's missed and both ARs are on looking at one plane, and nobody's looking at the third plane. So you got ball, you got somebody in front, you got somebody behind. And those ARs have to make sure that they're not in the same plane as the other AR. So they have to be aware of that. Their job as an AR is to look at where you are and anticipate where you're not going to be. And that's the biggest difference. And too often the ARs will fixate on the ball a bit, and that's not good. I mean, that's the one piece of advice that we try to give all the ARs is don't focus on the ball.
You're not a referee. You're not the middle referee.
two ARs and just throw this out there. Especially as we get the playoffs and things like that. You need to not acknowledge anybody other than the people you need to acknowledge. You're gonna have a friend come up behind you. You're gonna have somebody in the stands that knows you. Hey, Pete, hey, what's up? You cannot turn around. You cannot acknowledge them. You cannot take in anything that is not part of the enclosure or part of what you're supposed to deal with. It looks very unprofessional, it's distracting, and it's just not generally good. So focus on your task at hand and ignore the externalities to the best of your ability.
Okay. Anything else?